On this episode of Talk About Games, we're going to be talking about the Analogue Nt. Let's take a look. So let's explain to you what the system is. It's a system that's similar to the AVS, which we've talked about before. Essentially, you can play NES games and Famicom games, and it's an HDMI system. This is different than the Retron 5 or system like that, because that system was all emulation. This, you can actually play the cartridges from the cartridges. I'm going to say right off the bat, though, before we say anything about this, the main complaint anybody is ever going to make about this thing is how expensive it is. This is, for this version of it, the black version, it is $500, which is a lot of money. And there is another version, which is the white version, that one's $450. So this is only for people that play a lot of Nintendo and are really serious about it, and you want a perfect signal, you want it to look great. Now, if you do want to spend the money, I think it's worth it, because we just looked over the system. I think it's great. It functions really, really well, so it's worth the money. But it's a little crazy. That's a lot of money to spend.
So the first thing I want to say about the system is it has what's called an FPGA core. And an FPGA stands for Field Programmable Gate Array.
Okay.
That basically means
I have
that
no idea what that
instead of this running the games in software emulation, like with the Retron 5, there's actually a chip inside here that the electrical pathways of that chip are programmed, so it's a programmable chip, to be similar or as close to identical to the NES as it can be.
Okay.
But it has a lot of quality of life improvements to it. Like, it has menus. It outputs in a variety of resolutions, including 1080p 60. It has the ability to be updated with the SD card slot on the side of it. It has numerous outputs on it, from these like audiophile grade RCA connectors to this really versatile VGA looking thing that allows video to be output in RGB, component, S-video, and composite, and of course the HDMI. There's also some really interesting other ports on the back of this thing that I want to mention, and the first one is a microphone port. Why would this have a microphone port on it?
Famicom.
For Famicom support. And similarly for Famicom support, there is the Famicom expansion port here, and you could use a Famicom disk system with this. The last thing I want to mention on the back is there's this USB port here, and that's to charge the wireless controller that comes with the system. You can actually buy this controller on its own. It's from a company called 8-Bit Do, and it is a wireless NES controller.
You plug this thing into the front of the system, and the controller itself you actually have to put into the USB slot on the back, and that charges the controller, and then you can play with it wirelessly. Now, Ryan was playing just a little bit earlier. We were playing Batman for NES, and how did you think that felt?
It felt really good. I think that there is some kind of, like, when you first start playing, there is some kind of like pairing that's taking place,
sure,
or some
between
kind of
this and this.
But once you input and the system receives your input, then it plays just like an NES controller. And I also like that when you're playing, you can assume the more modern configuration where you're on Y and B.
Because that's like Super Nintendo.
It's more like Super Nintendo. And in fact, it's because this controller is sold on its own, you can use it with a PC or whatever, it has shoulder buttons.
So it has shoulder buttons so that if you wanted to plug it into your PC, you could do that and play other games. But speaking of the controller, you can actually plug in, using this, you can connect it to like a PlayStation controller or something like that. So there's all different options as far as controllers, but the one that they pack it in with is actually very good. Now, if that's not even good enough for you, even though that this works well, of course there's 4 ports on here, and you can play it with the original controllers.
The ports are really well made and really tight. When you stick a controller in here, you're gonna have to really give it a pull to get the controller out.
As is the cartridge slot.
Yeah, the cartridge slots are really tight too, and they have these nice dust covers on them like this, but you can see this is the Famicom, the smaller one, and this is the NES one here.
And you have to have your games very, very clean for it to work.
Yeah, the contacts are very sensitive, but once you start playing, it's rock solid. On the bottom, you can see that the system's made of aluminum. It's this black aluminum. It's very, very heavy.
Yes.
But the bottom of it is this polycarbonate, and you can see the board, and you can see just the details on the board. The one thing that I thought was interesting on the board is all of the features on here have this like gold-plated look. And the gold-plated look continues to the audio jacks on the back, and even the pins on the cartridge parts here. They're like, this system is $500.
Yeah.
And they spent every dime of it on the weight and the quality and this.
It's super high quality.
Yeah.
But there even is a version that's better than this, believe it or not. If you want to go really insane, if $500 isn't crazy enough for you already, they also offer a gold-plated version for $5,000. So you can play your Legend of Zeldas, and you can play your Nintendo World Championship carts on it all day long for all 2 people out there that are going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you need an electroplated gold NES. I mean, like this is already excessive, but
It is.
I understand. Like someone like Mike, this is made for someone like Mike who plays NES every day. If you're a casual NES player, there's a million options. We have a pile of NESs here.
For people like me, sure, but
Yeah.
I think what you actually mean is there's a lot of people, on Twitch and people that stream, people that are streaming old Nintendo games and, other systems, if you're on YouTube and that kind of thing, and you're looking for the output to be perfect for your videos and that type of thing, I think it's a good system for YouTubers, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has, it definitely is a step up from the AVS, and I wanted to show them side by side.
The ABS I think is great. Now,
Yeah.
honestly, like the NES Classic came out, and everybody was hyped about that. Now, this thing was more expensive, but you can't get the NES Classic anymore.
So-
And not only to mention that, but like this system, you can do Famicom on it, and I know that I know it's very expensive to get all those games, but you can't get the NES Classic, so. The option that you want to go for really is the AVS, I would say, if you're not looking to spend a ton of money. But if you had the money to spare, this is a more quality item. I mean, just the fact that you can hook it up with all these different outputs is really awesome.
You can't play gun games on this one, and that's the key thing that the Analogue Nt does that you want to look at. That's a functional benefit of it. There is this VGA looking port that outputs in everything on it. Every analog format possible.
It even does S-video, actually, believe it or not. So the package that I got, actually, it includes an HDMI cable, and it included, this is the RGB cable. It included the component cable, and I believe it also does composite, and even S-video. So whatever you want, it does. So that's pretty amazing. Really, like, this is a dream come true item for fans of the NES.
Don't you wish they made electronics like this in general? Just like when you go to buy something, you get this like plasticky piece of crap.
I love. You know what?
You should get this.
You know
It's
what
like
this reminds me of?
workmanship.
I agree with that. And you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of holding an original G1 Transformer. This is like holding Optimus Prime, because it's so heavy, and you hold like some of the modern toys. They're made out of plastic. Back in the day, things were quality. This feels like something. This is a quality piece of equipment, but it better be for $500.
I just want to say this has the FPGA core that we were talking about and all of that. Everybody. Last year there was the Coleco Chameleon, and they're like, we're going to use an FPGA core, we're going to do all this stuff, and it's going to be great. And it turned out to be vaporware and not real.
Yeah.
This thing is real.
This is totally legit.
It's totally legit. And this is the promise of what the Coleco Chameleon was supposed to be.
Right.
This is like actually
This is it.
that thing in this nice package.
Yeah, this is awesome. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the menus. So when you're playing the games, and first of all, the games themselves, when you're playing them, they look great. There's all sorts of video options, like, if you want it to be 480p, or if you want it to be 1080, or whatever you want.
PAL options, too.
You can crop the screen, you can put on scan lines, there's options for everything that you'd ever want want to do with the video, and there's also options for everything that you'd want to do with the audio. Just endless. There's certain games where there is certain audio options that you might want to alter, and this can do anything that you would want it to do. Now, when you're playing the games itself, like I said, there's no lag with the games. It works like an original NES. They look fantastic. So with the menus, if you want to get to them, you're playing a game, you just hit down and select on the controller. It's very easy to do. But another thing I want to talk about is actually the prices in general of all these things. Now, the AVS was $170. Then there's the Retron 5, which is the emulator system, and that was $160.
The Retron HD.
The Retron HD, only $39.99. Maybe we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but that's only 720p.
It's not an emulator system.
It's similar. It's only 720p, but there are major limitations, and there's been. That's the cheap one. Yeah. So at the low end of the market, there's a Retron HD, just came out at the beginning of June, $40. Then there's this one, and how much was this? $170.
$170. This is $500 or $450 if you have the other version. And then, of course, speaking of price, the NES Classic is unattainable.
Yeah.
So, unless you're getting scalpers on eBay or something like that, which is a shame. But
I mean, Nintendo just announced, and here's what's going to be the real defining factor. If you want to play on original hardware now, like we said, there's all these great options that you have to play original games on original hardware. I hope that this competition causes Nintendo's online service to really be great, because they're offering a subscription service now where you subscribe and then you could play some NES game, some library of NES games, and you just have them forever as long as you're paying for the subscription fee. So Nintendo really has to up their game, either make NES Classic-like devices available or have that service be really great, because these options are amazing.
I can't imagine Nintendo releasing anything of this quality
ever.
I would be shocked. I know that they're going to start putting like NES games downloadable onto the Switch, and I think that that's awesome. I would love to be like at the airport with the Switch playing like Dr. Mario or something like that. But I don't think Nintendo is ever going to put out something like this.
It's like this enthusiast item, and it's great that we're able to do this.
Yeah, so this thing is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I do want to mention on here that there's the SD card slot for updates. And there have been several updates to compatibility for the Analogue, so it's important that you have the latest firmware. There is a third-party firmware out there that gives the system new capabilities. So if you're interested in having this system have additional capabilities beyond what it has now, you should check out those third-party firmwares. They're being developed by an individual, and they look exactly the same, but they do unlock new features that you would want that involve SD cards. So check out that third-party firmware.
So to sum up, I want to ask you a question. Would you buy this system?
It's very, very expensive.
Do you think it's worth it enough for $500?
Do I think it's worth it for $500?
Or would you just get the AVS?
Well, I
guess it's a matter of personal opinion.
I haven't had any issues with the AVS.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the goal of the system is to play games. And I don't really dig too deeply into the settings. So for me, not wanting to dig deep into the settings, just wanting to plug in an HDMI, I don't have other types of TVs. I feel like the thing that would make me want to buy this is if I had a nice CRT or a nice RGB TV, medical monitor, whatever, and I wanted to play gun games.
Okay.
I think that this is the ultimate way, even over and above the original NES.
Well, I actually know for a fact that you really like Duck Hunt.
I do.
So if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But is it really worth $500 for you to play Duck Hunt on this and have it look real nice, or play Duck Hunt on an original NES and just hook it up to a CRT and be done? instead of spending $500
Yeah.
is really the question.
I mean, the price is hard. The price is really hard. Like, I really want it.
Yeah.
I want to be clear.
I
want to have one of these.
Yeah.
But the price, I mean, there's a lot of things you want to spend your money on, and it's too much for me.
Yeah.
It's too much for me. I mean, I got this that, you know, it does a lot of things, and it's my go-to now. It's hard for me at that price. That's all I have to say. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but it's hard for me.
For me, as somebody who does a lot of gaming videos and stuff like that, for me it's worth it. I think for some people it would be worth it. I would buy this system. I would not buy the gold-plated system.
No,
but if they want to send me one, I will be more than happy to do a whole video on the gold-plated one.
Talk about the gold-plated one.
Just want to send us one.
I think it's great that the company is really, really laser focused on what people want, and then they're like, well, you know, if somebody wants to give us $5,000, we'll gold plate this system. I mean,
some dude just came up to them and they're like, hey, we can gold plate that for you. You can sell it for $5,000, and they're like, yeah, why not? You know.